close. And just being 2 months away, we got OTAs starting recently, just yesterday, actually, pretty much, with all the players finally being there. But like I said, 2 months away from action, and that gets me really excited. And going off of that, I'm really glad here again to have John or Y4 here with us. It's awesome to have such a close knit group of friends that can really just go out of their way and do stuff like this, and kind of branch off onto others. How do you want to say it? Like, talents or like
Passions.
dreams or passions. There you go, passions. See, that's what we got him here today. He can keep me on the right track. But hey, glad to have him. And with that being said, are you ready to get your fix? So, like any other day, we're going to kind of get started with a couple teams and then another bit of news here. But for the first team, I guess, by now we all kind of heard about that Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff trade. Now, with this, we're going to talk about the Detroit Lions because we already talked about the Rams side of things with the Matthew Stafford trade, okay? But now this trade not only really changed the scenery for the Lions, they actually had a head coaching change who brought in a lot of a lot of other coaches position-wise. So kind of right off the bat, like, what do you think, I guess, overall, like, how do you think Dan Campbell's going to do, being that he was a former tight end for the Lions and a former tight end coach for the Saints? How do you think he's going to come in here and try to progress the Lions?
I do not know much about Dan Campbell at all.
Me neither.
Yeah, honestly, before that interview he had, I never heard of him. So, for me to give a good opinion about that, I know.
Well, what do you think about their coaches, I guess, in the past? Do you see like a trend, kind of, I guess?
Yeah, unsuccessful seasons for
Very.
the Lions. So, I don't know. Maybe they think having someone that has history with the team, maybe he'll still have that drive to make them successful, and maybe he'll put it to good use. But like I said, I got no clue what he's capable of.
Exactly. And like how he said there with head coaches not really having success, okay, the Lions have been the team that really, they seem like they can make the playoffs and really make some noise, but ultimately, they never really do, okay? The last playoff win they had was in 1991 against the Cowboys, okay? And that was in the divisional round, 38-6. They absolutely demolished them, but then they lost right after that. So, and then since then, they've only been in the playoffs 8 times, okay? And all of those games were in the wild card round, and they lost them all. So this team's really, not successful at all. Head coaching could be an issue. It could be ownership. Even though ownership's been there for a while, I guess then you could put that on them. But at the same time, players or the personnel they have and all that stuff kind of plays into that. But this team really is kind of looking to make a push and put that playoff drought kind of behind them. Now, not necessarily think it's this season, but I mean they did draft a good couple pieces, I think, this year and at least the past 2 years. I mean, what do you think about like DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown this year, Jeff Okudah last year as well, and then Penny Sewell? They bring in these talented guys, but what do you think going forward these guys are capable of doing for this team, I guess?
I think that'll help. In a lot of games last year for the Lions, they were close games that could have went either way. DeAndre Swift had that one where he dropped it right in the end zone, and I was reading somewhere, if he didn't drop that, and there's one other game that they had that was last minute, and it was either a bad call or something, and it went the other way. But if those 2 games go any other way, and I think one of them was a division game with the Bears. I think that was that one. And if they would have won that, they could have possibly snuck their way into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they were right behind us and the Cardinals, kind of neck and neck a little bit.
So just being pretty close last year to sneaking their way in, maybe these pieces can get them in there. But it is a change of coaching and a lot of first years and
new playbooks and all that stuff.
It can be dicey. So.
Oh yeah, and like also with Penny Sewell. So I've talked about their offensive line, okay, and it isn't the greatest, but it is pretty solid. Okay, I went and looked at it, and it could be one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. Now that's kind of far-fetched, being how much Matthew Stafford has been hit in the past. So maybe they have the right guys. Maybe it's just kind of up in the air. They don't really know what these guys are actually capable of and if they actually are bad. But I mean, Taylor Decker, he could be very good, obviously, but he has had an injury problem in the past. Jonah Jackson, this is his third season coming in. He's looking to make that big jump, and that's one thing. They get rid of one or two pieces, and now they have to rebuild that chemistry with other people. Now, they did go out and sign Frank Ragnow, or Ragn, I don't know how to say his last name, but they signed him to a 4-year contract, $54 million, and this guy's one of the top offensive linemen in the NFL, okay? Then they go get Penny Sewell. We've talked about him. Now, how do you think, I guess, this offensive line is going to play a factor? Because they didn't do too well with Matthew Stafford there, but, new coaching, maybe they could have better offensive line coach or something like that, and they do have a pretty solid, I'd say, lineup. I mean, for the most part, what do you think these guys are capable of?
The talent's there, then yeah, it's all about coming together and being on the same page. An offensive line is being a unit, and everybody on the same page, communication, and if they can get that working together and they're well coached, I think they could be a lot better than what they were last year.
Oh yeah, I guess to say production wise, I really don't know how well it's going to be. Just because, last year, or in the years before that, they've let a lot of defenses through the line. Matthew Stafford gets hit a bunch. Their run game's kind of hit and miss. They had to bring in Adrian Peterson. I think they had a 3 running back crew last year with, I think, Adrian Peterson, DeAndre Swift, and who was that other dude? It was he wasn't really too prominent of a piece, but they had a 3-person lineup there, and mainly that was because the defensive line was always getting through, linebackers were blitzing, and they just couldn't do much, so they had to rely on the passing attack. But that really, I guess, doesn't help too much, because if you're going to rely on the passing attack, you got to have at least some protection. And these guys, I think, on average, was 2.5, 3 seconds, and that's not enough time. I mean, it is, but at the same time, if you're trying to throw that deep ball and score points, you're going to need that. But then you look on their defense, and their biggest problem would probably be their defensive line or their linebacker positions, okay? They have a couple solid guys, but they aren't really standoutish, okay? They really don't make too big of plays, and they're not really, you don't really look at their name and be like, oh, this guy's a top 10 guy or a top 5 guy or something like that. It's guys, they're all over the place. I mean, Jamie Collins, he would be their best guy at linebacker. They have literally nobody. When I was looking, I was like, okay, who are these guys? Had really no idea. But Jamie Collins, okay, he flies the ball. He gets a lot of tackles. He's going to help big time in that run game. Okay, 2018 he had 103 tackles, 2019 81, and then last year, 81, and then last year he had 101 tackles. So he's going to be, and I think they finished, I want to say it was 5-11, I believe, when I looked at it or something. Really low, anyways. I know they finished. Was it last in the division, or was that the Bears?
I think that they were last.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were last. But yeah, they don't really have too many known names at the defense, or in their defense, I guess I should say. But at defensive back, okay, they got Jeff Okudah, drafted last year. I'm pretty sure was injured, I think, for most of the season last year anyways, at least the beginning of it. So he really didn't get to play too much, so he should be pretty solid this year. They got Quentin Dunbar from the Seattle Seahawks. We know what he's capable of. And then Tracy Walker, okay, we heard a little bit about him last year. Wasn't really too big of a defensive piece, I guess, but he did make some plays. But saying about that, okay, they don't have much depth on any of their defensive, personnel or their position-wise. So how do you think this is going to affect them, I guess, going forward this season? Because I don't see them moving in in a forward direction. I see them kind of stagnant, staying where they were last year, and really not doing too much because of this defense.
Yeah.
See that. And there are still a couple pieces in free agency that they could go take a peek at. Now, how they're going to do or go about that, I don't know, because I think they know what their guys are, who their guys are on defense. And, OTA's just started, so they're kind of just getting in the thick of things and really kind of coming together as a team. Now, the main reason this team really hasn't had any success, like we just noted, is about that defense, okay? But if that offense can start clicking, I think they could be all right. We talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown. If he, plays like Justin Jefferson did last year, I think the Lions are in a good spot, especially, Jared Goff. He could all of a sudden explode, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, they have weapons, but do they have protection? And I don't think they do. I mean, what would you think on that? Kind of.
Yeah, just if the line comes together, and Goff, I mean, he doesn't have I don't think he has nearly the talent that he had with the Rams around him. So,
No.
seeing him being more successful, I just don't think it's going to happen on
He's
the
the same-
Lions.
same.
And I could see him doing worse.
Yeah.
But I guess it just depends on, I don't know, the coach. So
Exactly.
so he could come out and surprise everybody.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so with that, I just feel like the Lions aren't really going to be that much better than we've seen them last year. So really don't expect too much out of this team because, history obviously has been repeating itself with that organization. I mean, they had Barry Sanders retire early, they had Calvin Johnson retire early, and those are two big names, and really they did it because they weren't winning, and they didn't want to go risk it on another team and not win again, and then it brings, their persona or their morale down a little bit. So don't expect too much out of them. They could, make a couple, win a couple shocking games, by a little bit, but at the same time, just don't worry too much about them. So enough on that. We are going to talk about a team that is kind of in an interesting spot, okay, the Carolina Panthers. Now, before the draft, Carolina decided to make a pretty big move. I mean, would you like to tell the folks what that move actually was? I mean,
all the Carolina Panthers, they traded a 6th-round pick
damn right they did.
and their 2nd and 4th round picks in the 2022 draft to the Jets for Sam Darnold.
Yes, they did. Now, take in mind, at this point, they still had Teddy Bridgewater. Okay, they didn't have Kyle Allen. He went in free agency to Washington, mainly because obviously Ron Rivera is there, and Ron Rivera coached them with Carolina. But they still had Teddy. Okay, they didn't know what they were going to do, who was going to start, Teddy or Sam. But I mean, it's kind of obvious. It's all right in that writing where when that post came up, Sam Darnold's being traded to the Carolina Panthers. You kind of knew, all right, well, Teddy's time's probably up. Sam Darnold, yeah, I mean, not really is proven he's a starting quarterback in this league because it's like, I mean, it is the Jets, and his seasons you could kind of compare it to, I guess not really. You can't say it's college football-ish kind of because it is the NFL and it is really good players, but at the same time, he didn't have much to work with. But they want to see what he's got. He's younger. Well, about the same year, I think, as Teddy. I'm pretty sure. Or a year after or something.
He's only in his 3rd year.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, so, yeah, he'd be younger than Teddy. So, after that, okay, they realized, well, we got to do something with Teddy. So they ended up trading him to Denver and got back, actually, that 6th-round pick in the 2021 draft that they ended up, I guess it wasn't really getting back the same trade. They just traded their 6th round to the Jets and then got one from Denver. So, and I think they moved up a little bit spottage-wise in that draft for it, but they knew they needed to get rid of him. They got rid of him cheaply, and that's awesome. Good for him. I hope he has a really good career in Denver. I believe we've talked about him a little bit and what they could do. But yeah, Carolina's now stuck with Sam Darnold, okay? And the Panthers have some pretty tough opponents, I'd say. Okay, they got Buccaneers, Saints, Falcons, and they did finish 5-11 overall. And obviously, going to be that piece. I mean, they traded for him. Now, what do you think about that? What was your first reaction or initial reaction of that Sam Darnold trade?
My initial reaction was, I don't know how much better he would be than Teddy, but at the same time, I think that they had a plan to trade Teddy later, obviously, and just that move right there tells me that they thought that they lost some games because of Teddy last year. They thought that they needed someone better in that position, and if they think that Sam Darnold's better, then hopefully they're right, I guess.
They kind of had a similar, I guess Sam's made it more similar of a play style to like Teddy. Like last year they had to scramble quite a bit. I don't think that protection was necessarily all there that well. So I mean, it sucks that if they thought it was Teddy's fault, I think they got to know. Because Christian McCaffrey wasn't playing.
No.
So then, right then and there, and then you got Mike Davis. Yeah, he did awesome. But you can't rely a whole bunch on that. You have a couple solid receivers, not too standout-ish, I guess you should say, but it really, I don't think 100% wasn't Teddy's fault. But if they did think that, I mean, geez. And if you think that Sam Darnold's going to be better, you really haven't seen anything of Sam Darnold. I mean, really. I mean, he hasn't had a team around him. So it's really a big, big risk when they could have just stuck with the risk they already have. I mean, Teddy he was 5-0 as a starter for the Saints. Did okay for the Vikings, I'd say. It was just that injury that really kind of screwed the pooch for him. But at the same time, I think it would have been less of a risk to stick with Teddy than to go out and trade for something that you really are kind of unsure about, I guess. Stacked, except for like the first round, I want to say.
I feel like we say that every year.
Yeah, that's
before
true.
The draft.
That's very true. Because like a lot of the good players end up going after round 1. I mean, you have your group 1 through 10 that obviously are going to make the team more than likely, and then you got the rest of the round 1 where it's kind of like, well, shit, they took my guy. Let's go take this guy then. It's kind of just picking. So yeah, if that second and fourth round pick actually work out for them, they could have a decent amount of personnel coming their way, especially the offensive line. They're going to need that. I think their defensive line too is a little short-staffed and with players and I guess performance level. But so they thought, Sam Darnold, they go out and trade for him. They thought he was going to be the piece. They get rid of Teddy Bridgewater. But here's the thing. Even though they think they might have found their quarterback and they got a solid running back in Christian McCaffrey, they got a solid wide receiver group in DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, like we just talked about not too long ago. But their offensive line is far from good. The only guy I really recognized was Pat Elflein, and he played for the Vikings. Got rid of him for a reason. Wasn't really that good, especially after, 3-4 years, I'm pretty sure, being with the Vikings. He just didn't progress at all. Didn't make any big stops or, blocks for us. He really was a filler, if you will, to get a better guy eventually. Now, Christian McCaffrey, with how bad that offensive line is going to have a tough time, okay, with the lack of talent. Okay, he's going to have a really tough time running the ball. And I think that was the big reason why we've seen the last 2 seasons prior to last year where he is more of a receiving back than a running back, I guess. Because he posted, 1,000 receiving yards, 1,000 rushing yards that one year.
Yeah.
But he did get past 2, I want to say, it was a crazy amount. I think it was over 400 times, I want to say. Like, they threw him the ball. So it was a lot of 2-yard, 5-yard gains. So that is kind of dangerous because now you're putting him, in harm's way because you got all these players flying up now where he's behind the line when he's going to get the pass. More than likely, that would be with a wide receiver halfback screen. So you got to kind of figure out your offensive line issue before you do that. So they're still going to have a pretty tough time. Now, their wide receivers are going to have to run a lot of short to medium routes just because that offensive line is not good enough, and that's okay because we've talked about how Terrace Marshall is mainly a medium to deep route runner, so he could transition that into a medium route game and have a little quick short routes, I guess if you will, here and there because you're going to need it. You're not going to be able to get the ball off. This is another team that, just like the Lions, it's going to be about 2.5 to 3 seconds of time, really, unless they, for some reason, connect on their blocks 100%. And like I said, never played offensive lineman. I mean, put me out there, I will get pancaked, I promise. It will not be good, but at the same time, find the guys that you actually need, not the guys that you think you need. Because, there's plenty, I think, in the free agency. They had a chance to go get Kyle Long, but he signed with, the Chiefs. They had a chance to sign, what was that one guy? I think he went to the Seattle Seahawks. But yeah, you guys get my drift. There's plenty of people in that free agency market, and it could be money-wise. But then again, that's complete bullshit because we've seen all these voidable contracts. So they could just sign him for a 1 year and void all the rest. And if he still plays pretty solid, you can obviously give him that money after this season. But I doubt Sam is going to have enough time to throw a lot of passes. Or it's going to be the same situation with the Jets where he's going to have to do a lot of scrambling and a lot of throwing on the run, and that's not going to be good because that is not his game. I think his game is being a pocket passer, or kind of like an Aaron Rodgers, I would say. Like, he is mainly a pocket passer, but the dude can run if he needs. And I think, what was it, last year against the Dolphins, he did quite a bit of that, and I think he ran for 40-yard. It was a 40-yard run. I don't think it was, no, it was a touchdown, but it was a long, decent run. So he has some jets, but I don't think necessarily that is his game. But now defensively, they're all over the place. Okay, they have some good pieces here and there, but really nothing solid. It is kind of just like the offensive line, our offensive line. Jesus, the Detroit Lions, where they have their pieces here and nothing else, and that's exactly what this Carolina team is. Okay, they have Hassan Reddick they got from the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals. All right, and they got Yetur Gross-Matos, who's a defensive end. They drafted him last year. He's supposed to be pretty solid, but when I did go look on the depth chart, they had him at the second. So hopefully he makes that jump because I think that guy could be pretty solid. They compared him a lot to Danielle Hunter, I think, in coming into the draft last year, and that's probably why the Vikings honestly really wanted him, but I think they found their guy this year. But then they got Denzel Perryman. You know, we've kind of known what he's about. He came from the Chargers. He's all right. He's pretty decent. But then you go and you look at their defensive backs. And this is where they might be okay. Because A.J. Bowie, we've seen what he can do with the Denver Broncos. He did pretty solid, I'd say, there. And then Jeremy Chin at safety. He's pretty hit and miss, but he is a really good, I think he's a faster safety.
Was he a rookie last year?
Yes, he was.
There's some saying that he was making a case for defensive rookie of the year.
I think he had, I want to say 3 picks last year, something crazy. He did really, really solid. So
Should
he
be
is
good this year.
Yeah, very good, I think. Especially with, because I think their other safety was, another guy that you're just like, what? Who is this? But, so he's going to be a big part of that defense. I can't remember who they had. It probably was Josh Norman, but he's not a safety. They had another safety not too long ago that was pretty solid. And I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But then you go look and they draft J.C. Horn this year. Okay, his dad played in the NFL as a wide receiver for the Saints. If you guys haven't, you've already seen, go on Bleacher Report, Gridiron, or whatever. There's a video of him talking about, I don't know how many of you guys remember this, but there's a Saints player, actually his dad, that went in the end zone, scored a touchdown, and used a cell phone, and he was the first one to actually use a prop, I think. No. Yeah, I think it was the first one to use a prop in a game. I'm pretty sure. It was either that or it was a marker. Somebody had a marker in their shoe, but I think it was okay. Then I think it was after this guy because he stuck a flip phone in his sock and then he scored the play, pulled it out, and just put it up to his helmet. So that was pretty cool. But J.C. Horn is looking to do what the rest of those rookies that have in the past have done with being sons of former NFL players like Anton Winfield Jr. Asante Samuel Jr. coming in this year. I think a lot of them are looking to be pretty good. We've seen in the past Clay Matthews Jr. with his dad, Clay Matthews, and all that. So I think those genetics right there are going to help tremendously. You've been around the game how long? You know a lot of people, all those connections. You've been able to train at a high rate. I think he went to South Carolina. Did really, really good. I think he was ranked in the top 3 of corners coming into this year's draft. So that's a huge pickup. But defensive line. You guys need help. Okay, there's nothing there to stop a run game. There's nothing there to contain, say, a Lamar Jackson. That's going to have to be all solely up to your corners. And J.C. Horn's fast. A.J. Bowie, getting a little older, but obviously still has that speed. We see what Michael Vick could do at age, 45? I want to say 46. Yeah. I wanted to say 48, but I feel like that's way too old.
Yeah, he's not 48.
Yeah, he has to be like 45, 46. But you're not going to lose too much speed. Okay, you might lose a little bit, but that's probably basically due to, I'd say, fundamentals. Because you're gonna fine tune those as you get older. You're gonna learn the game a little bit more and know what to do a little bit.
He's 40.
40? Oh wow.
Only 3 years older than Rodgers.
Yeah.
Come back and play for the Packers.
Oh jeez, might as well. Brady's almost 43. That man's old. Going for 8 too, I bet you. No, it's gonna be a tough, interesting year, especially with all those number changes.
It'll be Chiefs again.
Oh yeah, no, they're definitely in the mix. But I did yesterday. I do think the Buffalo Bills are going to put up a really good fight. Now, can they handle that firepower? We'll find out. I think their defense though is pretty solid. They got the pieces, but defensively going back to Carolina, I think they can be a pretty solid defense. I mean, how would you look at their defense? Just looking at kind of those names that I listed off right there.
I think that it'll be one of those defenses that you see a lot of leakage with. Some games are going to let up 35 plus points, but there's going to be games where the defense actually stands up, I think, and have that just be that fiery, hard hitting
Crew out there
defense with bits and pieces of guys stepping up here and there.
How do you think Hassan Reddick's going to transition from Arizona?
He's pretty good with Arizona.
That's what I thought.
And I don't think that anything should be different with this play type.
No, definitely not. But yeah, look, I just don't think this team's going to be consistent enough. Like he said, okay, there's going to be games where that defense is going to be shit. Obviously, it's just going to happen. They have way too many holes, just like the Lions. It's going to be bad. But there's going to be also those games where you're like, geez, maybe this is the week we turn it up and we continue, going down the road, being pretty solid and win some games. But it's not going to happen. It's just going to be one of those here and there kind of things. But with going off of that, they're not going to be especially that good against, say, a Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense or like a Chiefs offense, like you just said, Bills offense. It's just, I think at that point there's way too many holes for them to do really anything or stop really anything, because the best way to stop Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce is you got to double one of them and hope to God the other one is not going to get the ball, because if one's not getting it, the other one's going to get it, and it doesn't matter because they're still going to put up a 100-yard game, 2 touchdowns, something like that. But this team is obviously, I think, pretty close to something kind of similar back to when they had Cam Newton when he put out that MVP type season, or he did have an MVP season there. But I think they're moving towards that direction where they could get into the playoffs, but they're definitely not playoff ready at this point. I think if they get there, it's going to be one of those scenarios like the Washington football team. Yeah, they're going to shock you maybe, but then when they get there, they're going to put up a good fight, but they're going to lose ultimately, and I think that's going to have to do with turnovers if they get there. But with the division they're in, yeah, I just do not see them. I think Jameis Winston's going to take over that division by storm. Not a whole lot, but he's going to put up a good fight where it's going to be Saints-Bucks head-to-head once again. We're going to see who takes that, where Carolina's going to be stuck probably in that third spot, especially with the Atlanta Falcons pretty much forced now to get rid of Julio Jones. Not really forced, but I mean, he came out publicly and said it. They've came out publicly and said that, yeah, we could entertain the idea of trading Julio Jones, and we'll see if they have the right offer. They just don't want to, but they also don't have any money. And that's kind of a big issue right there. And we've talked about the Julio Jones thing yesterday. But this team, like I said, is close to being something special, just not quite there yet. They need a couple more pieces on defense and that offensive line. Now, don't expect a lot from this team this season. Okay, but be ready for some exciting games. Just like he said, that defense, there's going to be times where they're going to shine. They're going to outshine that offense, and they're going to be a major piece of why they win a couple games. The offense will be at the same time, just because Christian McCaffrey is a stud, and hopefully Terrace Marshall turns out the way he does, and Sam Darnold actually shows us that he can play quarterback in the NFL. But obviously, we got to see if he actually has a team and a group around him, because I think he can. I could see this team, again, winning 5+ games, which would be better than last season. They finished 5-11. So it really is all up to them to where they are going from there. Okay? Now, before I get to this last piece of news or information, I kind of want to talk to John here a little bit about last night. Aaron Rodgers. He goes on SportsCenter with a guy, I can't really remember, I think it's something Murray, Ken Murray or something like that, goes on SportsCenter, it's Ken Murray's last show ever as ESPN journalist, where SportsCenter journalist has brought many, smiles, many tears to folks around the nation. He's been there for quite some time, I believe 20 years. You see Nash, he's like, yes, sir, and all that. But, look, we got some people here. It's all right. Don't worry about it. This is an atmosphere where you don't know what you're gonna get when you're gonna get it. It's just that's how the cookie crumbles. But hey, we're all right. But we're gonna talk about that Aaron Rodgers situation. What did you kind of get out of that? I guess.
What do you say?
Like the whole deal. Well, pretty much he said that if we can get these dogs to be quiet, to be awesome. If anybody got some tricks, you should let that one out. Let that one out of the room. But anyways, what Aaron Rodgers said was pretty much they asked him about wanting out of Green Bay. Okay, and he said, you know what? I love my coaches. I love my players. I love my coaches. I've never had a problem with anybody. We have great chemistry. But kind of like another Marshawn Lynch. What do you gotta think? What do you gotta say, kind of, on that whole situation?
Shit. It is what it is. I don't know. Just wait and see, basically.
Do you think he has the right, obviously, to miss OTAs? Even though he's been a part of it, he's never really missed one, I'm pretty sure, in his whole career.
Yeah, if he doesn't want to play there, then I wouldn't go either.
Exactly. And not even that, I think he has every goddamn right. Just like what Colin Cowherd said on Twitter, somebody commented about this whole situation about missing OTAs, and he was like, the man won the MVP and led pretty much the whole NFL quarterback position in every goddamn category. The man has a right to miss OTAs. He knows the playbook by now. It's year 2, 13-3 both years, made pushes to the NFC Championship, just couldn't knock down that final wall to finally try to get Rodgers that ring. And I think, honestly, this would be a good question. Do you think if they would have won the Super Bowl, say they go to the Super Bowl and they win it, what happens with Rodgers?
He probably comes back.
Think so?
No, I don't think a lot of this happens.
Yeah? Unless
winning answers a lot of questions. And
yes.
if you just won a Super Bowl with the team, first thing you want to do is repeat it.
Exactly.
And I mean, if you're able to keep most of those guys or keep all the guys like the Buccaneers did, then you're definitely going to want to stay and run it back.
With what do you think about, let's say, they win that Super Bowl, and yeah, obviously, he's like, all right, I want to come back for another year, but then that Jeopardy thing comes. I mean, he's done it all in the NFL. Pro Bowl appearances, Super Bowl, MVP, led the NFL in how many times in yards and touchdowns and stuff. And then if Jeopardy were to come up like it did this time, what do you think then? Think he'd still come back?
Like he said, he can do Jeopardy and play in the NFL at the same time.
He did do that. I think we talked about that a little bit if you didn't know. He did say he was with, I think it's his girlfriend now at the time, but they were, after they did all the shootings for, I guess I should use a different word than that, all the different episodes, I guess, for Jeopardy. He came out and they decided to see how many episodes they can do and how many days they could do it in that, I think it's a 6-month span of no football. And pretty much it was a math equation that he just flicked out and said, yeah, I can do that and get 20, 40 episodes done in a 6-month span doing that and still play football. And that is honestly pretty crazy. Now, he did do a really good job, Jeopardy, and he's probably has a job lined up there when he retires unless they find someone, obviously better. But I think that's obviously in the books there, and in I guess that's a possibility for him. But yeah, last night, that was awesome. Did you hear what the SportsCenter guy ended it with?
No.
So he ended the interview with Rodgers looking all scraggly and looking like he's just chilling, drinking some whiskey. He's like, now you told me to invest heavily in cryptocurrency. It dropped 40%. I lost my job. My daughter just wants a comforter. Fuck you, Aaron Rodgers. And walks out with a smile on his face, and Rodgers, all he says was, he's like, oh, I love you, Ken, or something like that. It was a pretty good way to end it. It was honestly as much intensity as there was building up that whole interview, kind of like trying to see what the real problem was. Right at the end, they hit you with the, it's just kind of just funs and games kind of thing. It's not really about too much. But now we're going to go away from that. We're going to talk about Antonio Brown, okay? And he is now officially good to go, because this morning Antonio Brown passed his physical where he actually had to have knee surgery at the end of last season. Not really 100% sure when he did injure. I think it was mainly in the playoffs, but he did have to get knee surgery, okay? Now, after passing this physical, Antonio Brown and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sat down, and like what Bruce Arians has done since they're winning the Super Bowl and since in the Super Bowl parade, where he told Chris Godwin and Levante David, "You're not going anywhere." Well, that's what happened with Antonio Brown. They sat down. He signs a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is huge, okay? They literally kept everybody from that last year. Now, I mean, they made a Super Bowl run, won the Super Bowl, 7 rings with Brady. Now they all really kind of know the playbook, so they're going to be clicking on all cylinders, I guess. With this signing, this is really huge, okay, for the Buccaneers. Antonio Brown still had 483 yards on 45 catches, which is about 10.7 average a catch, and 4 touchdowns. Now, bringing him, we've seen him with Tom Brady in New England, and now he comes back with Tom Brady with the Bucs. What do you think this is really saying for Antonio Brown? Because he has all those allegations against him, and we're not going to talk about that, but what do you kind of see with this situation with Antonio Brown, who's kind of recently wanting to stay around Tom Brady? You think it's ring chasing? You think it's kind of trying to establish himself as still an elite receiver? Or
I think he just wants to play and have the best chance to win. And when you're with Tom Brady, I mean, it's the best chance you get to win when you're playing with him. So, yeah,
I think it helps him with the attitude as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of Antonio Brown's attitude issues are way in the past.
Yeah, same.
I mean, those antics really haven't showed up anymore. And last time it did happen, I think, was when he was on the Raiders. Even when he went to the Patriots, it died down. But it just didn't work out there.
I think with New England, they did tell him, they're like, the only way we're gonna sign you is if all that shit's out the window. Like, that does not happen here. And I think that really kind of opened up his eyes, because at that point, you got to kind of change, because no NFL team's going to give you a chance if you're just going to continue, to knock down the dominoes. And he's made a really good, I guess, switch up. Now, like we said, I don't necessarily think he's ring pushing, but definitely wants the best chance to win. And I think this definitely gives him that opportunity. And he doesn't have to be a really big piece. I mean, they still have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Who is that?
Scotty Miller.
There you go, Scotty Miller. He was a stud. I remember using him on Madden, even though it doesn't matter. He was awesome. But very, very good. I think Tom Brady, for some reason, that man just likes those smaller, receivers, I guess you could say. Those not really 100% talent-wise. Like, they don't have it all, but they're gonna be consistent. He really likes those receivers, and Scotty Miller's gonna play a big part in that. So Tony Brown doesn't have to do much, but he's gonna do what he always does, and he's going to score. And whether that's on one catch a game for 93 yards or something crazy and he scores, so be it. But he's going to be pretty good for this. And now being able to, hopefully anyways, play a full season, because last year he missed the whole first half, 8 games. I think even the year before that he had to miss, I think, was 4 to 6 games or something with the Raiders, I want to say.
Yeah, it's been a while since he's played a whole season.
Exactly. So if he has a chance to play a whole season, it's going to be very, very good news for the Bucs, because with that much depth at wide receiver, you can do anything. And their tight ends, I think, are pretty solid. Wasn't it O.J. Howard and Gronk is coming back? And who knows what Gronk can do, because it's obviously not that good in the playoffs, or not in the playoffs, the regular season, but then you see him go in the playoffs, and he's making some moves, and we got Cameron Brate at tight end. I mean, their weapons are literally top to bottom, all there. Running back crew is Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, and they drafted that one. They drafted somebody from, I think, Georgia this year, or it was Ohio State. We talked about it, so just go back and look. But, I mean, this is pretty big, okay? So being able to play a full season is going to be awesome for Antonio Brown. Not just for him, but literally the fans, as us, because, we've seen what he can do. This guy was electric. I mean, coming in the league, starting as a punt kick returner, and then coming out of nowhere really because of a hurt wide receiver, and next thing you know, he's the number one guy. He's on Madden cover, and all these other accolades that you see him get. He's obviously still wanting to prove that he is capable of being what he once was, and we've seen that from recent performances like last year. Okay, 400 yards. So that's about 120 yards he's gonna get, and then a touchdown after that. So that's pretty decent. You gotta watch out a little bit because you go look at the Browns. They did this kind of same thing where they stacked up. They tried to keep everybody they had and just built on that. And then, well, I guess a lot of this would have to do with coaching because they brought all this talent in, and they were kind of confused of what really to do with it. Like, this could be the same situation. I don't know how you would kind of think about that because, I mean, with all that depth.
I mean, it's the same guys that were there last year.
And they did find a way.
I don't see how it could be a problem. Yeah, the Browns situation, I mean, Freddie Kitchens just wasn't ready to be an NFL coach.
No. He's definitely an all-right position coach, but yeah, I think since they figured out a way last year, they should be able to figure it out this year. But we'll see what happens, okay? The Buccaneers are going to be a good team again, obviously. You're going to be a good team if you have Tom Brady still on your team, unless for some reason the dude just is dog shit, really. That's going to be hard to do, especially with the TB12 method, or really, I guess, just physically, because obviously Father Time's going to catch up with all of us, and it just catches some of us a little later than others. But who knows? I mean, you're going to win regardless if you got Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers on your team. You're going to at least win 500, or 50% of your games, I should say. So just watch out for this Tampa Bay team to be pretty explosive, I'd say. They're going to make another run in that playoffs, but their number one, I guess, enemy or their number one rival or their number one roadblock is really the Saints. Because I think the Saints can be good. What do you think about the Saints this year, kind of with their situation, I guess?
Well, they still got a very talented roster. And I think that Jameis Winston is going to do really well.
Yeah.
I think in 2 years, Jameis Winston's going to be a lot of people's favorite quarterback. I think he's going to prove so many people wrong. I think he's matured a lot. He's been putting the work in and just being with Sean Payton. And I know that he's a very talented quarterback. Just needs to be put to good use, and who's a better guy to have to do that
than Taysom Hill, I think, anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think Taysom Hill, he's 34 or something like that.
Yeah, he's not that young.
So, I mean, he really hasn't been used his whole career as like a quarterback. Because he did come in the league as a quarterback. And then finally they include him in that wildcat formation. And really the rest is history. I mean, he's the reason why you actually have... he's the reason why he was able to be selected as a tight end for fantasy draft, because even though he is listed under the quarterback position, the dude doesn't do that. I mean, he can. We've seen it last year, and I think really the reason last year with that was they wanted Jameis to kind of learn more than they wanted him to play. Because he did play a couple, I think it was like 2 throws, but I think they wanted him to sit.
Yeah, that touchdown pass in the playoffs, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
He launched that sucker to that.
I think, yeah. Who was that against? Was that against...
I think they won the game.
Yeah.
I think it was the first playoff game that they played.
Did they? Oh, I think they had to go up against the Packers after that. Because it would have been... Because it wouldn't have been Bucks Saints, would it?
No, they didn't play the Packers last year. Packers played the Rams and the Bucks.
It would have been Bucks Saints then.
So then they didn't.
Yeah, because it was the third game, and they decided they wanted to see who's going to actually come out on top. Because I'm pretty sure it was either 1-1 or 0-2 last year.
Yeah, it was the
Bucks. Is that when he made the throw?
Yeah, 56 yards.
So yeah, Jameis Winston. That LASIK obviously paid off a little bit. I think we're going to see pretty big things from him this upcoming season. At least hopefully, obviously. Because he was a former number 1 overall draft pick over Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota sucks for him. I think he could still probably be a starter in this league. I think it was just wrong place at the wrong time, kind of. Because I think he had Jack Del Rio as his head coach with the Oakland Raiders at the time. But who really knows? I mean, this is the part of the season where it's like